The Woman of the Abbey Fields. In the far reaches of 14th century England, where fog rolled down from the moors and cloaked the old abbey ruins, there lived a woman named Eleanor Wren. She was not a noble, nor a peasant exactly, but something in between, a healer, a midwife, and in whispers, a woman touched by the unseen. Her cottage stood on the edge of the old abbey's graveyard, a place most avoided after dusk. The villagers would cross themselves when passing her path, muttering that Eleanor's herbs grew stronger because the dead fed her soil. She never denied it. Each evening, as the bells of St. Avin's Abbey tolled across the mist, Eleanor lit her small oil lamp and watched the light dance against her walls of herbs, jars, and bones. Her only companion was the quiet sound of wind sweeping through cracked stones, until the night she first saw the ghost. It began with a scent, not decay, but lilies, sweet and faint. Then a soft voice, like breath caught between two worlds. "Do you still remember my name?" Eleanor froze. The air thickened. Her lamp flickered. Through the doorway, she saw a figure, pale as moonlight, robed in gray, her face veiled. The outline of a woman, standing among the graves outside, still as carved marble. The villagers had long told of a ghost that haunted the abbey, the Grey Lady of Avon, said to be a noblewoman who perished in sin centuries ago, but never before had she appeared to anyone living. Eleanor stepped to the threshold, heart steady despite the chill that crept along her skin. The ghost tilted her head as if curious. The air shimmered faintly around her, not malevolent, but mournful. "Why come to me?" Eleanor whispered. "Because you can hear," the ghost replied, "and I am not yet at rest." That night, the ghost did not vanish until dawn. When the first rays of sunlight touched the abbey walls, she faded, leaving behind only a single white lily on Eleanor's doorstep, fresh as though plucked from heaven itself. Eleanor picked it up, knowing her life and her solitude would never again be the same. Whispers in the herb garden. The morning after the Grey Lady's visit, Eleanor could not shake the feeling that the air around her cottage had changed. Even the bird song seemed hushed, as if the world itself was listening. She carried the white lily inside, placing it carefully in a clay vase beside her hearth. Its petals were perfect, untouched by time or decay, and a faint fragrance lingered, sweet and sorrowful. She tended her herb garden with trembling hands, but every time she bent to touch the soil, she thought she saw the ghost's pale eyes reflected in the dew on the leaves. Rosemary, sage, and thyme, each plant seemed to hum softly, vibrating with an unseen presence. Eleanor had always believed in the spirits of the earth, in the wisdom hidden in roots and bark. But this was different. This was a spirit who spoke. By midday, the villagers whispered more insistently as they passed. "The abbey is restless," one said. "A lady walks the graves again." Eleanor nodded silently. She had never feared the dead, not in the way the living feared them, but now a new weight pressed upon her chest. She felt the pull of secrets long buried beneath the abbey stones.
That evening, as shadows lengthened and the moon rose pale over the moors, Eleanor lit her lamp and opened her leather-bound journal. She had begun recording the strange signs and dreams she had been having since childhood. Dreams of figures cloaked in gray, whispers in the night, and footsteps that were not her own. Tonight she wrote slowly, deliberately.
I saw her again. She waits beyond the graves. Her sorrow is deep, yet she seeks something I do not understand. Perhaps she believes I can help. As the words dried on the page, a chill brushed the back of Eleanor's neck. She turned, half expecting to see the gray lady standing in the doorway. But the cottage was still, save for the faint flicker of the lamp. Then a soft whisper rose from the garden, almost too faint to hear. Come, if you dare. Eleanor's heart leapt, not in fear, but in a strange, compelling curiosity. She took a lantern and stepped outside, the mist curling around her ankles, wrapping the night in silver. The abbey ruins loomed ahead, silent and ancient. Somewhere among the gravestones, the ghost waited, not with malice, but with an unspoken plea that Eleanor felt deep in her bones. Tonight, the living and the dead would meet again, and the secrets of the Gray Lady would begin to unfold.
The abbey ruins. Eleanor gripped her lantern tightly, the flame trembling as much as her own hands. The mist that clung to the abbey ruins seemed almost alive, curling around broken stone walls and toppled archways like fingers reaching from another age. Every step on the damp, moss-covered cobblestones echoed, yet she felt no one beside her. And yet, she knew she was not alone. The ghost of the Gray Lady glided ahead, pale and silent, her robe brushing the tops of the graves. The figure did not turn, but Eleanor felt her gaze, weightless and penetrating, urging her forward. The once grand abbey had fallen to centuries of decay. Walls crumbled, stained glass lay shattered on the floor, and ivy wound its way through the arches like dark veins. Eleanor's lantern caught a glimmer of something unusual, a small carved emblem, half hidden beneath fallen stones. Kneeling, she brushed away the dust, a delicate engraving of a rose entwined with a sword. Her fingers traced the intricate lines, and she felt a sudden shiver run down her spine. This was a symbol she had seen only in her dreams, a recurring vision since childhood, always accompanied by whispers she could not understand. From the corner of her eye, the Gray Lady stopped beside a collapsed wall and raised her hand. Eleanor stepped closer, heart racing. The ghost pointed to the ground where faint etchings had been carved long ago. Letters worn by time, but still legible. E.M.V. Remember me.
Eleanor's mind spun. The letters, the rose and sword, the melancholy presence of the ghost, all were threads of a story she had yet to untangle. The Gray Lady's lips moved, though no sound emerged, and Eleanor felt the meaning. The spirit sought remembrance, and perhaps redemption. The wind picked up, whispering through the ruins, carrying with it a faint perfume of lilies, the same scent that had heralded the ghost's first appearance. Eleanor understood then that her life had been irrevocably entwined with this spectral figure. She had no choice but to follow, to uncover the secrets buried beneath centuries of stone and sorrow. The night deepened, and with it the mysteries of the Grey Lady began to seep into Eleanor's very soul. The hidden chamber. As Eleanor moved deeper into the abbey ruins, her lantern's light danced over crumbling walls and jagged stones. The Grey Lady glided silently ahead, her presence a pale shimmer in the mist. Eleanor felt the meaning. The spirit sought remembrance, and perhaps redemption.
Near the far end of the nave, hidden beneath a fallen beam and ivy, Eleanor discovered a narrow doorway, almost invisible against the moss-covered stone. The air that seeped from within was colder than the night outside, carrying with it the faint scent of old parchment and something faintly floral, the same lilies that had accompanied the ghost. With a deep breath, Eleanor pushed the beam aside and stepped through. The space beyond was small, a forgotten chamber built into the abbey's foundations. Dust motes floated in the lantern light, and cobwebs hung like delicate curtains from the low ceiling. Against the far wall, a chest carved from dark oak lay partially hidden beneath a tattered cloth. Eleanor approached it carefully. The chest was locked with a rusty iron clasp, but the Grey Lady hovered close, as if urging her to open it. Trembling, Eleanor lifted the lid. Inside were remnants of a life long past: a folded dress of faded velvet, a silver locket tarnished with age, and a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon frayed and brittle. She lifted the letters, brushing away dust, and saw delicate handwriting, each word etched with sorrow and longing. Eleanor realized that these belonged to the Grey Lady herself, Eleanor Montclair Vera, a noblewoman whose life had been tragically cut short. The initials matched the etchings on the stone.
The ghost's voice, soft and mournful, whispered through the chamber. "They took my love, my honor. Help me be remembered." Eleanor felt a shiver of empathy, the chill of the chamber mingling with the warmth of her heart. She understood now that the haunting was not just sorrow, but a plea for justice and remembrance. The story of the Grey Lady was bound to her, and Eleanor knew she had become the bridge between the living and the lost. The first step toward uncovering centuries-old secrets had been taken, and the Abbey seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Letters of the past. Eleanor carefully untied the brittle ribbon, her fingers gentle so as not to tear the ancient parchment. Each letter exuded the faint fragrance of roses and dust, and the ink, though faded, still bore the elegance of a skilled hand. As she began to read, the words formed a story that had been silenced for centuries. The letters spoke of Eleanor Montclair Vera, a noblewoman of rare beauty and sharp mind, betrothed to a man she did not love. Her heart had long belonged to another, a squire named Thomas, whose loyalty and tenderness were whispered in hidden corners of the castle gardens. Their love was secret, fragile, and dangerous in a world governed by duty, power, and fear of scandal. One letter described a stolen moment in the Abbey's moonlit courtyard. "My dearest Thomas, if the walls of this Abbey could speak, they would bear witness to the warmth of your hand and mine. Yet shadows loom, and I fear the light of our love may be extinguished before it blooms." Another detailed betrayal by a jealous cousin who coveted Eleanor's inheritance and position. Threats were made, secrets exposed, and the young lovers were torn apart. The final letter was unfinished, the ink smudged as if by hurried hands or tears. "They have taken him from me. If anyone reads this, remember us. Remember that love, truth, must endure." Eleanor's heart ached as she read. She could feel the anguish that had bound the Grey Lady to the Abbey, the sorrow that had kept her spirit from rest. The ghost hovered silently, as though listening, her pale eyes fixed on the letters, glimmering with hope and sorrow intertwined. For the first time, Eleanor understood her role. Not just a witness, but a keeper of memory. The Grey Lady's story demanded to be told, to be remembered beyond the cold stones and misty graves. And Eleanor knew that she must tread carefully, to honor love, reveal truth, and confront the echoes of betrayal that lingered like shadows in the night. Traces among the ruins. The dawn was pale and fragile as Eleanor stepped out of her cottage and made her way toward the abbey ruins once more. The mist clung to the gravestones, curling around her ankles like silken threads, and the first bird calls pierced the stillness. In the quiet, Eleanor felt the presence of the Grey Lady hovering just behind her, urging her onward. She moved carefully among the fallen stones, her eyes scanning for anything that might reveal the fate of Thomas, the squire whose love had been stolen from the world so long ago. At the base of a collapsed arch, she found faint footprints pressed into the mud, partially obscured by years of rain and moss. They were small, careful, and purposeful, not the tracks of a noble guard, but of someone used to moving quietly, perhaps even hiding. Nearby, she noticed a fragment of fabric caught on a jagged stone, faded blue, the color of the uniforms that squires sometimes wore. Eleanor knelt and touched it gently. The fibers felt brittle, yet familiar, as though echoing the touch of hands long gone. Her breath caught. The Grey Lady appeared at her side, translucent and sorrowful, pointing toward a narrow path that led deeper into the overgrown gardens of the abbey. Following the invisible guidance, Eleanor discovered a sunken garden wall, almost entirely reclaimed by nature. Beneath its ivy-covered stones, a small, hidden alcove lay forgotten. In it, she found a rusted dagger, its hilt engraved with the initials T.M., worn but unmistakable. The evidence of a struggle, perhaps even of betrayal, lay silent before her eyes. Eleanor felt a chill as she stood, realizing that the past was not as distant as she had imagined. The love of Eleanor Montclair Veyra and Thomas ended not in peace, but in treachery, a betrayal that still haunted the abbey's stones. The Grey Lady reached out, her hand hovering near Eleanor's shoulder. No words came, but the ghost's intent was clear. Eleanor was meant to uncover the truth, to trace the story that had been silenced for centuries, and perhaps to bring justice to the restless spirit. With resolve hardening in her chest, Eleanor rose, lantern in hand, ready to follow the final traces of a love that death itself could not sever. The squire's disappearance. Eleanor knelt beside the rusted dagger, tracing the worn initials T.M. with a trembling finger. Her mind raced, attempting to stitch together fragments of a story buried in centuries of silence. Who had taken Thomas from Eleanor Montclair Veyra, and why had the abbey kept its secret so well? As the morning mist lifted, Eleanor explored the alcove more carefully. The soil was loose, as if recently disturbed, though she knew the centuries had long since erased signs of time. Beneath a layer of dirt and leaves, she uncovered a small leather-bound journal, the cover cracked and water-stained. Opening it carefully, she saw sketches of the abbey, maps of hidden passages,
and notes written in a hurried, delicate hand, Thomas's hand. The journal told of secret meetings with Eleanor Montclair Veyrac in the moonlit gardens, whispered promises, and warnings of a cousin who coveted her estate. One page, more worn than the others, described the night of his disappearance.
Eleanor felt her chest tighten. The story of betrayal was no longer abstract. It was tangible in the leather and ink, a lifeline reaching across the centuries. The gray lady appeared beside her, more solid now, her sorrow palpable. Her eyes seemed to beg Eleanor to continue, to seek justice for a love stolen in darkness. Eleanor understood the enormity of what lay before her. She was no longer merely an observer. She had become the vessel through which the Gray Lady's story would live, the one who could uncover the truth and perhaps bring peace to a soul long trapped between life and death. With the journal tucked carefully into her cloak, Eleanor rose from the alcove. The abbey seemed quieter now, as if the stones themselves held their breath, awaiting the next step in a story that had waited far with horror and resolve. The cousin's betrayal had not been a moment of passion or anger, but a calculated plan to claim what was not rightfully his, sacrificing love, loyalty, and life in the process. The Gray Lady's gaze lingered on the ledger, a silent plea for justice emanating from her spectral form. Eleanor knew that this was only the beginning. To free the spirit of the Gray Lady, she would need to follow these clues to their source, confront the legacy of betrayal, and ensure that the story of Eleanor Montclair Veyrac and Thomas would finally be remembered. The servant's secrets. Eleanor lingered in the overgrown alcove, the Gray Lady hovering silently beside her, her sorrowful gaze fixed on the scattered ledger and fragments of evidence. The night air was thick with mist, carrying the faint scent of lilies and damp earth. Eleanor knew that the betrayal was not complete without uncovering the role of the servants who had aided Lord Richard Montclair in his cruel scheme. Carefully she searched the abbey ruins for signs of hidden chambers or forgotten rooms where records or belongings might have been kept. Near the old kitchen wing, she discovered a partially collapsed storeroom, its door barely hanging on rusted hinges. Inside, dust-covered crates and jars lay abandoned, but among them, a small bundle of papers tied with twine caught her eye. The handwriting was hurried, the ink smudged, but unmistakably recorded names, bribes, and instructions. The servant's complicity in Thomas's disappearance. Eleanor read in silence. They had been promised gold, land, or favor from Lord Richard in exchange for silence and action. Some had led Thomas into the hidden chapel. Others had removed evidence and erased traces of the young lovers' secret meetings. Each detail tightened the knot of grief in Eleanor's chest, yet it also illuminated the path to truth. The Gray Lady moved closer, her translucent hand hovering over Eleanor's shoulder, a silent reassurance. "You see now," she whispered, voice like wind through stone. "The web of betrayal is complete. Remember, and speak the truth that was stolen from us." Eleanor carefully documented the servants' names and the actions detailed in the records. Though the centuries had long passed, the truth remained, waiting for someone courageous enough to acknowledge it. She realized that the servants, driven by fear and greed, had become unwilling witnesses to history, their deeds preserved in faded ink and forgotten corners of the abbey.
With the ledger and notes secured, Eleanor felt a surge of resolve. She now had the full map of deceit: Lord Richard's ambition, the servant's complicity, and the fate of Thomas. The next step would be to confront the remnants of the past and uncover any remaining traces that could restore peace to the Grey Lady. The night deepened, shadows stretching across the abbey walls. Eleanor lit her lantern and prepared to follow the final threads of betrayal, ready to bring light to a story that had been hidden in darkness for centuries.
The secret artifact. Eleanor moved carefully through the ruins, the lantern's light quivering across the crumbled walls. The Grey Lady glided beside her, her spectral presence steady and silent, guiding Eleanor toward what remained hidden, the final piece of the story. Each step echoed against cold stone, as if the abbey itself was whispering, urging her to uncover what had been lost to time. In a shadowed corner of the eastern wing, Eleanor noticed a small, ornate box partially buried beneath rubble. Its surface was carved with delicate floral patterns and tiny symbols, some of which matched those in Thomas's journal. Her heart raced as she lifted the box, brushing away centuries of dust. A faint glow emanated from within, illuminating her hands with an otherworldly light. Inside lay a silver pendant, shaped like a rose entwined with a sword, identical to the emblem Eleanor had seen etched on the stone in Part 3. Alongside it she found a folded parchment, its ink faded but still legible. The note contained a message from Thomas. "To whoever finds this, know that our love endured even in darkness. Let this pendant and these words bear witness to the truth. The betrayal that separated us must be remembered, for love cannot be destroyed by greed or deceit." Eleanor lifted the pendant, feeling its cold weight in her palm. The artifact seemed to hum faintly, resonating with the presence of the Grey Lady. She realized this was not just a token of love, but a key, a symbol that bound the living to the past, allowing Eleanor to bridge centuries of sorrow and betrayal. The Grey Lady's form shimmered, more solid than ever. Her eyes glistened with emotion, a mixture of gratitude and longing. "You have found it, the last piece. Now the story can be told and the past honored." Eleanor understood then that the pendant and the message were the final confirmation of Thomas's love, the artifact that could restore the narrative of betrayal and devotion that had haunted the abbey for generations. Holding it close, she knew her next task was to confront the echoes of the past, to uncover the truth about Lord Richard's actions, and finally to release the spirit bound by centuries of grief. The ruins seemed alive with anticipation as Eleanor rose, lantern and pendant in hand, ready to continue the journey that would finally reveal the full story of love, betrayal, and redemption. Confronting the truth. Eleanor stood in the center of the abbey ruins, the lantern's glow illuminating fragments of broken stone and moss-covered walls. The Grey Lady hovered nearby, her pale form flickering as if caught between sorrow and hope. In Eleanor's hand, the silver pendant pulsed faintly, carrying with it the weight of love and betrayal across centuries.
She carefully pieced together the evidence she had collected. Thomas's journal, the letters, the ledger detailing the servant's complicity, and now the pendant. The final artifact of a love that had been brutally torn apart. Every detail pointed to Lord Richard Montclair, whose ambition had shattered 2 hearts and left a ghost bound to the abbey. Eleanor felt the full gravity of the injustice that had been hidden for so long. Following the clues,
she discovered a sealed doorway in the northern wing of the abbey, where centuries-old records of the Montclair estate were stored. Inside, she found documents confirming the cousins' schemes, forged letters, bribes, and hidden accounts that detailed his calculated actions against Thomas and Eleanor Montclair Vera. Every signature, every mark, spoke of greed and malice. The Gray Lady drifted closer, her voice barely audible.
See it, know it, remember it. Only truth can release me.
Eleanor read the documents carefully, her fingers tracing the inked lines of history. She realized that though centuries had passed, the truth had survived through hidden messages, relics, and the memories of the living. She had become the keeper of that truth, the bridge between the past and the present. With resolve hardening in her chest, Eleanor lifted the pendant high, whispering to the Gray Lady, "I remember you. I remember Thomas. I will tell the world your story, and you will be free."
The ruins seemed to breathe with her words. Shadows softened, the wind stilled, and for the first time in centuries, the Gray Lady's form glimmered with serenity. Eleanor knew the path ahead was clear. The story of love, betrayal, and redemption would finally be told. The ritual of remembrance. As night fell over the abbey, Eleanor prepared a small space in the hidden chapel for a ritual she hoped would honor both Eleanor Montclair Vera and Thomas. The lantern's warm light flickered against the ancient stone walls, illuminating the silver pendant, the journal, and the letters she had gathered. The Gray Lady hovered silently, her spectral eyes reflecting both anticipation and relief. Eleanor arranged the relics carefully on a flat stone, surrounding them with candles. The scent of lilies, ever present, mingled with the faint smoke of the wax. Kneeling, she spoke aloud, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. Eleanor Montclair Vera, Thomas, your love has endured beyond the shadows of greed and betrayal. Tonight, I bear witness. Tonight, your story will be remembered. She held the silver pendant high, allowing the faint glow to illuminate the chamber. The Gray Lady's form shimmered brighter with each word Eleanor spoke, the sorrow in her eyes softening. As Eleanor read aloud passages from Thomas's journal and the letters, a gentle wind stirred through the chapel, lifting dust and petals alike, carrying the essence of the past into the present. No darkness can erase what was true. No betrayal can sever the bond of hearts united in love. You are remembered, and your spirits may now find peace.
A calm settled over the abbey. The air, once heavy with grief and secrets, felt lighter, as if centuries of sorrow had finally been acknowledged. The Gray Lady's figure seemed to glow with an ethereal warmth, and she reached toward Eleanor, a silent gesture of gratitude. Then, slowly, the ghost began to fade, her form dissolving into the soft light of the lanterns, leaving behind only the faint scent of lilies and a lingering sense of serenity. Eleanor felt a deep exhale of relief pass through her, as if the abbey itself had been freed from the weight of long-hidden pain. With the ritual complete, Eleanor gathered the journals and letters, knowing that she carried the story forward, a testament to love, betrayal, and the endurance of memory. The night was still, the ruins peaceful, and for the first time in centuries, the abbey seemed at rest. Reflections in the Ruins. Eleanor sat on a fallen stone bench in the abbey courtyard, the lantern beside her, casting soft light across moss-covered arches and shattered columns. The night was calm, with only the distant whisper of wind through the ruins and the faint scent of lilies lingering in the air. The Grey Lady was gone, her spirit freed by Eleanor's act of remembrance, yet her presence seemed to linger in the shadows, like a gentle sigh of gratitude.
Eleanor traced her fingers along the cold stone, remembering the journey she had undertaken, from the first appearance of the ghost, through hidden alcoves and secret passages, to the discovery of Thomas's journal, letters, and the silver pendant. She thought of the lovers torn apart by greed and betrayal, and the centuries of sorrow that had weighed upon the abbey. Every detail of the ruins now seemed imbued with meaning. The cracks in the walls that had hidden secrets, the ivy-covered alcoves that bore witness to clandestine meetings, and the fallen arches that had long shielded the truth. Eleanor realized that the stones themselves had been silent storytellers, waiting for someone patient and compassionate enough to listen. With a deep breath, she whispered softly, "Your love endures, Eleanor and Thomas. Though the world tried to erase you, your story will live on. I will see to it that it is never forgotten." The wind stirred, lifting petals from the courtyard floor as if the abbey itself was acknowledging her vow. Eleanor felt a profound sense of peace, not only for the Grey Lady and Thomas, but also for herself. She had become the keeper of memory, the bridge between past and present, and the bearer of a story that would echo through time. Rising from the bench, Eleanor gazed across the ruins one last time. The abbey, once heavy with sorrow, now seemed alive with the memory of love and endurance. With lantern in hand, she turned toward the path leading back to her cottage, carrying with her the legacy of the Grey Lady and Thomas, a story of love, betrayal, and the power of remembrance that would never fade.
Sharing the story. The morning sun broke over the misty moors as Eleanor walked the narrow path from the abbey ruins back to her cottage. The silver pendant hung around her neck, a tangible reminder of the love and sorrow she had uncovered. In her hands, she carried Thomas's journal and the letters, relics of a story that demanded to be remembered. The Grey Lady's presence was gone, freed at last, yet Eleanor felt her guiding spirit in the quiet rustle of leaves and the soft scent of lilies that seemed to follow her steps. Upon reaching the village, Eleanor began speaking quietly with the elders, recounting fragments of the tale. She shared the names, the betrayal, and the enduring love of Eleanor Montclair Vera and Thomas. Some villagers listened in awe, others with skepticism. Yet each tale Eleanor told added a thread to the tapestry of memory, weaving the past into the present. Eleanor carefully showed them the relics she had uncovered, the pendant, the letters, and the journal. The villagers marveled at the artifacts, their details tangible proof of events long thought lost. Children listened wide-eyed to the story of love, loyalty, and betrayal, while adults nodded solemnly, understanding the depth of sorrow that had haunted the abbey for centuries. In the evenings, Eleanor would return to the abbey ruins, not as a fearful observer, but as a custodian of history. She placed flowers near the hidden chapel and the alcove where Thomas's journal had been found. She spoke softly to the Grey Lady and Thomas, sharing the village's acknowledgement of their love and suffering. Sharing the story.
The morning sun broke over the misty moors as Eleanor walked the narrow path from the abbey ruins back to her cottage. The silver pendant hung around her neck, a tangible reminder of the love and sorrow she had uncovered. In her hands, she carried Thomas's journal and the letters, relics of a story that demanded to be remembered. The Grey Lady's presence was gone, freed at last, yet Eleanor felt her guiding spirit in the quiet rustle of leaves and the soft scent of lilies that seemed to follow her steps. Upon reaching the village, Eleanor began speaking quietly with the elders, recounting fragments of the tale. She shared the names, the betrayal, and the enduring love of Eleanor Montclair Vera and Thomas. Some villagers listened in awe, others with skepticism. Yet each tale Eleanor told added a thread to the tapestry of memory, weaving the past into the present. Eleanor carefully showed them the relics she had uncovered, the pendant, the letters, and the journal. The villagers marveled at the artifacts, their details tangible proof of events long thought lost. Children listened wide-eyed to the story of love, loyalty, and betrayal, while adults nodded solemnly, understanding the depth of sorrow that had haunted the abbey for centuries. In the evenings, Eleanor would return to the abbey ruins, not as a fearful observer, but as a custodian of history. She placed flowers near the hidden chapel and the alcove where Thomas's journal had been found. She spoke softly to the Grey Lady and Thomas, sharing the village's acknowledgement of their love and suffering. Through her dedication, the story that had been buried in shadows was now celebrated in the hearts and minds of the living. Eleanor realized that remembrance had the power to heal, to honor, and to grant peace to those who had been lost. The abbey itself seemed lighter, the ruins no longer oppressive, but a sanctuary of memory and reverence. Eleanor's journey had begun with a whisper and a spectral presence, yet it ended with the enduring truth. Love, even when challenged by betrayal and time, could never truly be extinguished. Unearthed secrets. Weeks passed since Eleanor began sharing the story of Eleanor Montclair Vera and Thomas with the villagers. Yet the abbey, with its crumbling walls and shadowed corridors, still held whispers of untold secrets. Drawn by curiosity and the lingering presence of the Grey Lady, Eleanor returned once more, lantern in hand, determined to uncover any fragments of the past that remained hidden. In the northeast corner of the ruins, beneath a collapsed tower, Eleanor discovered a small, iron-bound chest, half buried in the soil. Its wood was dark with age, but the lock, surprisingly, was intact. With careful hands, she pried it open and revealed additional documents. Letters exchanged between Lord Richard Montclair and distant allies, detailing schemes of manipulation, bribes, and threats. These letters revealed not only the cousin's betrayal, but also a network of deceit that had ensured the lovers' separation. Among the papers, Eleanor found a miniature painting, a delicate portrait of Eleanor Montclair Vera, depicted in the abbey gardens, her expression serene yet tinged with sadness. Nearby, a note in Thomas's hand read,
"Should you find this, remember us not only for the tragedy, but for the love that endured beyond shadows." Eleanor felt a wave of reverence and sorrow. These artifacts painted a fuller picture of the treachery, the love, and the courage that had defined the lives of the two young lovers. She realized that the story was richer than she had known, layered with human ambition, loyalty, and loss. The Grey Lady appeared, her form shimmering softly in the lantern light. Her gaze was no longer mournful, but grateful. "You see all now. Our story is complete. Remember it, and it shall live." Eleanor gathered the letters and the portrait carefully. She understood that each discovery strengthened the narrative, ensuring that the past would be remembered faithfully. With resolve, she prepared to return to the village and add these revelations to the tale, honoring the lovers fully and ensuring that their memory would endure for generations. Presenting the truth. Eleanor returned to the village with the newly discovered letters and the delicate portrait of Eleanor Montclair Vera. The villagers gathered around her cottage, curiosity shining in their eyes as she laid out the artifacts carefully on a wooden table. The morning sun filtered through the windows, illuminating the faded ink, the silvered edges of the portrait, and the story that had waited centuries to be told. She began recounting the expanded tale, the depth of Lord Richard Montclair's ambition, the network of bribed servants, and the deliberate separation of Eleanor and Thomas. The villagers listened intently as Eleanor described the hidden alcoves, the secret passages, and the final resting place of Thomas's belongings. The pendant, the letters, and the journal were tangible proof of love, loss, and betrayal. As Eleanor shared the portrait, the villagers marveled at the serene expression of Eleanor Montclair Vera, her eyes captured in the painting as if they held the centuries of sorrow and love she had endured. Children leaned forward, captivated by the romance and courage of the young lovers, while adults nodded solemnly, recognizing the enduring truths about human ambition and compassion. "This story," Eleanor said softly, "is not only about grief and betrayal, but about love that transcends time. We must remember them, Eleanor Montclair Vera and Thomas, and honor the sacrifices and courage they showed." The villagers murmured their agreement, and together they decided to hold a small memorial at the abbey ruins. Flowers were laid in the hidden chapel and alcoves, candles were lit, and the story of love, betrayal, and endurance was spoken aloud, finally granting Eleanor Montclair Vera and Thomas the recognition they had long been denied. The Grey Lady's presence seemed to shimmer in the morning light, her form fading gradually with a sense of fulfillment. Eleanor felt the profound weight of centuries lift from the abbey, replaced by reverence and remembrance. The ruins were no longer merely stones of sorrow. They had become a testament to love's enduring power. The Abbey's last secret. As Eleanor wandered the abbey ruins in the soft glow of dusk, she felt a tug in her chest, a subtle, almost imperceptible pull guiding her to a forgotten corner behind the collapsed bell tower. There, beneath a thick layer of ivy and rubble, she discovered a small, hidden compartment carved into the stone. Dust and web cobs coated the edges, and the faint scent of old parchment drifted from within. Sharing the final revelations. Eleanor returned to the village with the leather-bound book carefully wrapped, its contents a treasure trove of hidden history. Villagers gathered once more, curiosity glimmering in their eyes, eager to hear the final pieces of the Abbey's long-concealed story. Eleanor opened the book and began reading aloud, her voice steady, carrying the weight of centuries and the warmth of remembrance. She shared Eleanor Montclair Vera's own words, the records of charitable deeds, secret alliances, and acts of compassion that had been hidden from the public eye. The villagers listened intently as Eleanor explained how the Montclair family, despite the shadows cast by ambition and betrayal, had also acted to protect the village, support the Abbey, and leave a legacy of hope. The children leaned forward, captivated by the idea that even in tragedy, goodness could endure. Adults nodded solemnly, reflecting on the consequences of greed and the importance of honor. The villagers were inspired, realizing that the story they had been hearing was not just a tale of sorrow, but a lesson in courage, love, and moral responsibility. Eleanor concluded by presenting the silver pendant, the letters, and the portrait of Thomas, alongside the newly discovered book. She spoke with reverence. Remember them, the love they shared, the courage they showed, and the hope that survived centuries of betrayal. Their story is ours to honor and preserve. The villagers, moved by the narrative and the artifacts, vowed to maintain the Abbey as a place of memory and reflection. Flowers were laid in the hidden chapel, candles lit at the alcoves, and a small memorial was established, ensuring that the tale of Eleanor Montclair Vera and Thomas would echo through generations. The Grey Lady's presence shimmered faintly in Eleanor's mind, a quiet acknowledgment of gratitude. The Abbey, once a place of sorrow and hidden secrets, now stood as a testament to love's endurance, hope's persistence, and the power of remembrance. Eleanor felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing she had bridged the centuries and honored the story that had waited so long to be told. The lasting impact. Weeks turned into months, and the village began to change under the influence of Eleanor's storytelling and preservation of the Montclair legacy. The Abbey ruins, once ignored and feared, became a place of reverence and reflection. Villagers visited regularly, leaving flowers in the hidden chapel, lighting candles in memory of Eleanor Montclair Vera and Thomas, and reading aloud from the journals and letters Eleanor had carefully preserved. Eleanor herself became a respected figure in the village, known not only for her courage in uncovering the Abbey's secrets, but also for her dedication to ensuring that the past was remembered truthfully. Children asked questions about love, loyalty, and courage, and Eleanor shared the story with patience, emphasizing the importance of honesty, compassion, and the endurance of the human spirit. The Grey Lady's presence, though unseen now, lingered in the Abbey in a peaceful way, a faint warmth that villagers sometimes felt in the cool evening air. Eleanor often returned to the ruins at dawn, placing flowers and reading passages aloud, feeling the deep satisfaction of having restored dignity to lives that had long been silenced. The Montclair legacy, once clouded by betrayal, now shone as a reminder of hope and love's resilience. Eleanor understood that history was not only about recording facts, but about honoring the emotions, sacrifices, and truths that gave life meaning. Through her devotion, the village had learned that even centuries of sorrow could be transformed into a lasting testament of memory, reverence, and inspiration. Eleanor gazed across the abbey ruins one last time that evening, the sunset painting the crumbling stones in gold and crimson. She felt a profound sense of closure. The past had been acknowledged, the Grey Lady freed, and the story of love, betrayal, and endurance secured for generations to come.
Guiding the pilgrims. As spring arrived, Eleanor noticed travelers and pilgrims beginning to visit the abbey ruins, drawn by the tale of Eleanor Montclair Veyra, Thomas, and the Grey Lady. Word of the village's dedication to preserving the story had spread, and people came not only to see the relics and ruins, but to pay respects to a love that had endured beyond betrayal and time. Eleanor welcomed them gently, acting as a guide and storyteller. She showed visitors the hidden chapel, the alcoves, and the overgrown stairways where secrets had once been kept. With the silver pendant, journals, letters, and the delicate portrait, she reconstructed the narrative, carefully explaining the treachery of Lord Richard Montclair, the sacrifices of Thomas, and the enduring hope and love of Eleanor Montclair Veyra. The villagers joined Eleanor in these pilgrimages, helping maintain the abbey and participating in small ceremonies of remembrance. Children were taught to leave flowers in the chapel and speak softly to the spirits of the past. Adults listened and reflected on morality, courage, and the consequences of greed. Eleanor realized that her role had evolved. She was no longer simply a seeker of secrets, but a bridge connecting the past with the present. Through storytelling, guidance, and preservation, she ensured that the Abbey and its history would continue to inspire, educate, and remind future generations of the power of love, memory, and resilience. At sunset, Eleanor often stood silently in the ruins, feeling the Grey Lady's presence in the gentle breeze and the faint fragrance of lilies. The abbey, once heavy with sorrow, now hummed with life, memory, and the enduring echoes of love, finally honored.
The Hidden Heirloom. One crisp morning, Eleanor returned to the abbey, her lantern in hand, and curiosity pulling her toward the northern wing she had yet to fully explore. Among the rubble and ivy, she discovered a small, ornate chest cleverly concealed behind a collapsed wall. Its intricate carvings bore the Montclair family crest, and a faint shimmer suggested it had been kept secret for centuries. With careful hands, Eleanor pried open the chest and found a collection of items: a silver ring encrusted with a single sapphire, a folded letter sealed with wax, and a small bundle of gold coins, an heirloom of the Montclair family long thought lost. The letter, addressed to Eleanor Montclair Veyra, revealed that these treasures had been hidden intentionally to protect them from Lord Richard's ambitions and greed. If fate prevents our union, let these tokens remain safeguarded, a testament to our bond and to the integrity of our lineage. Eleanor felt a mixture of awe and reverence. The heirloom was more than wealth. It symbolized love, protection, and the courage of those who had lived centuries before her. It reinforced the story she had been entrusted to preserve, the enduring devotion between Eleanor Montclair Veyra and Thomas, and the treachery they had overcome. The Grey Lady appeared briefly, her form glowing softly, her gaze approving. Eleanor placed the heirloom carefully alongside the journals, letters, and pendant in her cottage,
recognizing that this final discovery completed the narrative. With these treasures preserved, the Montclair legacy of love, betrayal, courage, and hope would endure, inspiring generations to come. Eleanor understood now that the Abbey's story was not merely a tale of sorrow, but a celebration of resilience, memory, and the enduring power of love.
Creating the archive. With the discovery of the hidden heirloom, Eleanor realized the importance of preserving the Montclair legacy for future generations. She transformed a room in her cottage into a small archive, carefully organizing the journals, letters, portrait, pendant, and the newly found heirloom. Each item was cataloged and stored with reverence, ensuring that the story of Eleanor Montclair Veyra, Thomas, and the Grey Lady would never be forgotten. Eleanor wrote detailed accounts of the events she had uncovered, narrating the love, betrayal, and courage that had defined the lives of the Montclairs. She included descriptions of the Abbey's hidden passages, the secret chapel, and the network of deceit orchestrated by Lord Richard. Her notes were precise yet compassionate, capturing not only the facts, but the emotional truth of those who had lived and suffered centuries before. The villagers soon became involved in the effort, contributing their own memories, local lore, and observations of the Abbey. Together, they built a comprehensive record that blended history with storytelling, creating a living archive that honored both the tangible relics and the intangible legacy of love and resilience. Eleanor felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had not only uncovered the truth, but had ensured that it would be remembered, respected, and shared. The Grey Lady's presence seemed to linger gently in the room, a quiet blessing for the work Eleanor had done. The Abbey's story, once hidden in shadows, now had a permanent home, safe, honored, and ready to inspire those who sought to learn from the past.
The memorial. Eleanor returned to the Abbey ruins with the villagers, carrying flowers, candles, and carefully preserved relics. Together they chose a serene corner near the hidden chapel for a memorial, a place where the story of Eleanor Montclair Veyra and Thomas could be honored for generations. Moss-covered stones were cleaned, ivy gently trimmed, and a simple wooden plaque was placed, engraved with the names of the lovers and a message of enduring love. Here lie the memory of Eleanor Montclair Veyra and Thomas. Betrayed in life, remembered in love, their hearts endure beyond time. Eleanor arranged the silver pendant, the letters, the portrait, and the heirloom beside the plaque, creating a tangible connection between the present and the past. Villagers lit candles and spoke softly, sharing stories, reflections, and lessons learned from the tale. Children left flowers in the chapel alcoves, learning that memory is far too long to be told.
Clues of betrayal.
Eleanor emerged from the hidden alcove, the journal of Thomas clutched tightly to her chest. The morning sun had begun to pierce the fog, casting long, golden shafts of light across the Abbey ruins. Every broken wall, every toppled column, seemed to whisper secrets she had yet to uncover. The Grey Lady hovered silently beside her, her pale figure shimmering like mist, guiding Eleanor without words. She retraced her steps through the Abbey courtyard, examining walls, stones, and scattered debris. Her eyes caught something unusual near the base of a fallen arch, scratches on the stone, deep enough to have been made by a hand or a weapon, partially hidden beneath ivy. Eleanor bent closer, realizing they formed a pattern, a symbol she had seen before in Thomas's journal, a family crest, partially erased by time,
matched the emblem of the cousin who had coveted Eleanor Montclair Vira's inheritance. A chill ran down her spine. The betrayal was not random, it was personal. Eleanor felt the weight of centuries pressing down, a carefully orchestrated act designed to separate lovers, to claim wealth and power at the expense of love and life. Following the direction suggested by the scratches, she moved toward the eastern wing of the ruins, where remnants of the abbey's old servants' quarters lay in shadow. There, half buried beneath rubble, Eleanor discovered a small, intricately carved box. Inside, she found a lock of hair tied with a faded ribbon and a torn fragment of a letter, stained with age and moisture. The handwriting was unmistakable, Eleanor Montclair Vira's own, addressed to Thomas.
The words were brief, but heart-wrenching. If you are taken from me, know that my heart will follow you beyond death, and that I will wait, though the world tries to erase our love. Eleanor shivered as the Grey Lady's voice, soft and almost musical, filled the air. You see now, the truth was hidden in plain sight, yet none could bear to tell it. Only you can remember. Only you can restore what was stolen. The abbey seemed to lean in closer, stones and ivy breathing with her realization. Eleanor knew the next steps were dangerous. She must uncover the identity of the betrayer, the circumstances of Thomas's disappearance, and the secret that had bound the Grey Lady to these ruins for centuries. With resolve tightening in her chest, Eleanor clutched both the journal and the relics to her heart. Tonight, the search would continue. The living and the dead were intertwined, and the path toward justice had only just begun.
The hidden passage. As twilight settled over the abbey, Eleanor's lantern cast long shadows across the crumbling walls. The Grey Lady glided silently beside her, her pale form flickering like candlelight in the mist. Eleanor's eyes scanned the ruins for any clue that might lead to Thomas's fate, her fingers tracing the worn stones as if reading them like braille. Near the north wing, Eleanor noticed a faint outline in the stone floor, a seam that did not belong, almost invisible beneath moss and debris. Kneeling, she brushed away years of accumulated dirt and found a small iron ring embedded in the stone. Her heart raced. Could this be a latch or handle? She pulled, and with a groaning sound of ancient hinges, a hidden trapdoor creaked open. The passage below was narrow and steep, descending into darkness. The air smelled of damp earth and old secrets, carrying with it the faint, lingering scent of lilies, the same scent that heralded the Grey Lady's presence. Eleanor hesitated, but the ghostly figure beside her beckoned silently. Step by step, she descended, her lantern illuminating rough stone walls, etched with faint symbols and initials. The atmosphere grew colder, heavier, yet there was a sense of inevitability. This was a place that had been waiting for her, and only she could uncover its truth. At the bottom, Eleanor found a small chamber partially hidden beneath centuries of rubble. In the center lay a chest, larger and more ornate than the one in the hidden alcove. It bore the seal of the Montclair family, worn but still recognizable. As Eleanor approached, the Grey Lady's presence grew stronger, almost tangible. The hidden passage. As twilight settled over the abbey, Eleanor's lantern cast long shadows across the crumbling walls. The Grey Lady glided silently beside her, her pale form flickering like candlelight in the mist. Eleanor's eyes scanned the ruins for any clue that might lead to Thomas's fate, her fingers tracing the worn stones, as if reading them like braille. Near the north wing, Eleanor noticed a faint outline in the stone floor, a seam that did not belong, almost invisible beneath moss and debris. Kneeling, she brushed away years of accumulated dirt and found a small, iron ring embedded in the stone. Her heart raced. Could this be a latch or handle? She pulled, and with a groaning sound of ancient hinges, a hidden trapdoor creaked open. The passage below was narrow and steep, descending into darkness. The air smelled of damp earth and old secrets, carrying with it the faint, lingering scent of lilies, the same scent that heralded the Gray Lady's presence. Eleanor hesitated, but the ghostly figure beside her beckoned silently. Step by step, she descended, her lantern illuminating rough stone walls, etched with faint symbols and initials. The atmosphere grew colder, heavier, yet there was a sense of inevitability. This was a place that had been waiting for her, and only she could uncover its truth. At the bottom, Eleanor found a small chamber partially hidden beneath centuries of rubble. In the center lay a chest, larger and more ornate than the one in the hidden alcove. It bore the seal of the Montclair family, worn but still recognizable. As Eleanor approached, the Gray Lady's presence grew stronger, almost tangible.
With trembling hands, Eleanor opened the chest. Inside, carefully preserved despite time, were relics of a love that had been violently interrupted. A torn cloak, a rusted sword with Thomas's initials, and a final letter sealed with wax. She broke the seal and unfolded the parchment. If you are reading this, my love, know that fate has conspired against us. I am taken, yet my heart remains with you. Remember me, Eleanor. Hold our love above all else, and let no shadow erase it. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes. The story was no longer a whisper. It was a tangible, aching reality. The Gray Lady hovered closer, her expression one of both sorrow and hope. Eleanor understood then. She must follow these threads to uncover who had betrayed Thomas and how to finally give the ghost her rest. The passage was more than a hidden stairway. It was a bridge to the past, a path that led directly to truth, justice, and the resolution that the Gray Lady had longed for over centuries.
The cousin's treachery. Eleanor climbed the narrow steps from the hidden passage, the weight of the chest pressing against her chest. The abbey above seemed quieter than ever, as if holding its breath while she prepared to uncover truths long buried. The Gray Lady hovered beside her, her pale form shimmering, urging her onward. Back in the ruined courtyard, Eleanor carefully examined the fragments of letters, the journal, and relics from the hidden chamber. She pieced together a story of jealousy, ambition, and calculated betrayal. The cousin, a man named Lord Richard Montclair, had long coveted Eleanor Montclair Veyra's inheritance, lands, titles, and influence. Thomas's presence threatened his plans, for the young squire was the only person who could protect Eleanor and her rightful claims. The letters revealed that the cousin had conspired with servants and guards, bribing them to separate the lovers. On the night of Thomas's disappearance, the cousin's men had ambushed him in the abbey gardens, dragging him into secrecy. Eleanor felt the horror and rage of centuries wash over her.
The betrayal had been deliberate, cold, and cruel, leaving Eleanor Montclair Vera alone, heartbroken, and eventually claimed by death. The Grey Lady's voice, soft but insistent, whispered through the ruins. "Remember, Eleanor. Tell them what was done. Let the truth outlast the stones that held it silent."
Eleanor's hands shook as she read more. One fragment hinted at the location where Thomas might have been taken, a hidden chapel beneath the abbey, forgotten by time, used by the cousins' men to hide those who threatened their schemes. The map in Thomas's journal, faint and nearly illegible, pointed to this secret chamber. The realization struck Eleanor. The abbey itself had been a witness to love, betrayal, and injustice. Every stone, every fallen archway, every hidden alcove carried the memory of what had happened. The Grey Lady's presence was a guide and a plea for Eleanor to right the wrongs, at least in remembrance, if not in justice. Eleanor drew a deep breath. The path ahead was dangerous, but she could not turn back. She must follow the clues, uncover the truth of Thomas's disappearance, and free the spirit that had haunted the abbey for centuries. With lantern in hand, Eleanor prepared to enter the shadowed eastern wing of the abbey, the next step in a journey through love, loss, and the restless echoes of the past. The hidden chapel.
Near the back of the chapel, a stone sarcophagus lay partially hidden beneath a collapsed wall. Eleanor approached carefully and brushed aside the debris. The lid was sealed with a simple iron lock, yet faint scratch marks suggested it had been tampered with long ago. With a steady hand, Eleanor lifted the lid. Inside, remnants of Thomas's belongings were carefully preserved: a torn cloak, a rusted sword, and a small journal. The Grey Lady hovered close, her translucent form trembling with emotion. Eleanor's heart ached as she read the journal, uncovering Thomas's final words: "If I perish, let Eleanor know my heart belongs to her, and no shadow of greed or deceit can claim what we shared." Eleanor realized that the chapel had been the final prison for Thomas, hidden away by the cousin's treachery. The ghost's sorrow was rooted in centuries of injustice, and Eleanor understood her duty to remember, to honor, and to restore peace to both spirits bound by love and betrayal. With a resolve burning in her chest, Eleanor prepared to piece together the final truths that had been buried in shadow, ready to confront the legacy of treachery that had haunted the Abbey for generations.
The shadow of Lord Richard Montclair. Eleanor left the hidden chapel, the journal and relics of Thomas pressed tightly to her chest. The abbey above seemed almost still, as if the stones themselves were holding their breath. The Grey Lady hovered beside her, her pale eyes filled with a mixture of hope and sorrow, guiding Eleanor toward the truth that had been buried in shadow for centuries. She retraced the paths of the abbey grounds, examining walls, collapsed arches, and remnants of old buildings for clues of Lord Richard Montclair's presence. Her keen eyes noticed subtle marks, scuffed stones near the gardens, faint scratches on windowsills, and fragments of expensive fabric caught on jagged edges. Evidence of hurried movement, traces of someone accustomed to secrecy and authority. The journal contained hints, too. Mentions of secret meetings, hidden corridors, and servants who had been bribed to silence the lovers. Eleanor began to piece together the cruel orchestration of Thomas's abduction. Richard's ambition had been meticulous, leaving no obvious trail. Yet the small symbols, the forgotten notes, and the hidden relics were threads Eleanor could follow. "He believed the living would forget us," the Grey Lady whispered, her voice barely audible. "But you remember. You will speak our story." Following the faint signs, Eleanor found herself at a forgotten section of the abbey, overgrown with thorn and ivy. Beneath the rubble, she discovered a small stone alcove that appeared to have been used as a hiding place. Inside lay remnants of a ledger, listing names and dates, payments to servants, bribes, and instructions from Lord Richard himself.
Eleanor's chest tightened with both horror